Hello everybody, this is the tutorial to our second day of class for the Blender class. I'm going to show you what we did to model the coffee mug as well as some extra stuff. And one of the extra things I've decided to show you how to do is something called setting up a viewport background. And really what that is you can, in Blender, you can set a photograph to appear in the background of your Blender viewport. So you can model whatever object with a photo of the object behind it. And that will help you, it'll help you model a more accurate model of whatever you're trying to create, as well as it'll kind of help you, in terms of this tutorial, it'll kind of help you visualize why we are doing certain things that we're doing, as opposed to just like have faith that this is going somewhere and this is where you should be placing these edge loops and so on and so forth. So in the description or in the about section of this video, if you do not wish to watch the beginning part where we're just setting up the viewport background and you just want to get right into it, I will include a time code in minutes and seconds that you can skip ahead into the video, so you don't have to do this part. But this is something that is really helpful. So if you do have time to set up the viewport background, it is something that I highly recommend doing. So without further ado, first step, we got to find the photo of the coffee mug that we're going to use on the internet. So we will open up our web browser and just go to google.com, and we're going to search for coffee mug. Now if we click the images tab, we will bring up the image results for coffee mug, and we have a lot to choose from. Basically, my only criteria for choosing a background image for 3D modeling is that whatever image I choose is as close to as sorry, I can't talk. It is as close to being a perfect side or front view of that object as possible. So for instance, this image right here where it's got a little bit of coffee that you can kind of see inside the top, that's not really ideal for a background image. We want something more along the lines of this. And this will be a nice perfect side view of a coffee cup. So we're going to choose this one. So I click that, and if I right click here on the image and go down to save image as, we can save it to my computer. So click save image as, and I like saving it to the desktop because it's just easy to get to. So if I go to desktop, I have a folder made called Blender class. I'm just going to save it there, but you can just save it wherever you want as long as you'll remember where it is. So click save, and now it's on your computer. So at this point, we just need to go in Blender and set it as the background. So we'll open up Blender again, and but basically your Blender, when you start it up, it looks like it'll have that splash screen usually. So if you have that screen with the girl on it, you can just click your mouse around it and it will disappear. And to set up the viewport background, let's first just hit 1 on the number pad and bring us to a front view, and hit 5 on the number pad to make it a front ortho view as opposed to perspective. And just remember that 5 on the number pad switches between perspective and ortho, but ortho is what we want to be in. And actually, I'm going to set up one thing just to make it easier to visualize. There, I just set up the screencast keys thing. So down here in the bottom left hand corner, you can see keys that I'm hitting as I'm hitting them right here. So we need to, all right, to bring the image into our background, if you look up here where my mouse pointer is, you can see there's this little plus sign just near the upper right hand corner of the 3D viewport. This little plus sign, if you left click it once, it'll open this little sidebar menu. And in the sidebar menu, you can scroll up and down, but where we want to go is all the way to the bottom of the menu. So scroll this bar all the way down by either clicking and dragging the bar itself or scrolling your middle mouse button down while your cursor is in this area. You can scroll down. Now if you go to, you can see it says background images right here. If you click the word background, it will collapse the menu down and show you this add image button. But you want to click this little dark gray box right here so that there's a check inside of it. And now if we click add image button with our left mouse button, of course, we get a little bit more of the menu visible. At this point, we just want to click the open button right here and browse to wherever you would save that photo of the coffee mug. For me, it was the desktop, so I'll click the desktop bookmark and go to my Blender class folder. And I'll select whitecoffeemug.jpg or whatever it's called for you and click open image. And now, as long as you are in front ortho view, you should have a coffee mug in your viewport background. And at this point, we just need to add a cylinder. So what I'm going to do is right-click this box, make sure it's highlighted in orange, hit X on the keyboard, and click delete. So now we have nothing in our viewport at all, which is good. Because this coffee mug is oriented to where it's like a cylinder and the top and bottoms are facing up and down, it'd be good to add the cylinder in a top view, because then it would be properly oriented, because the cylinder is going to add with the cap facing towards whatever perspective. And if you're viewing it from the top, that's how we want to add the cylinder. So that's good. So if we hit 7 on the keypad, that will bring us to a top orthographic view. And notice how my 3D cursor over here got placed off center. So we want to place it back in the center. And to do that, we hold Shift and hit S while holding Shift. It'll bring up the snap menu. And we can just click cursor to center our 3D cursor. Because remember, the 3D cursor is the point in space where we add our new three-dimensional objects. So to add this cylinder, we're in top ortho view right now. If you're not in top, just hit 7 on the keypad to bring us into a top view, and 5 toggles between perspective and ortho. So while we're in ortho, we're going to hold Shift and hit A while holding Shift and go to Mesh and then Cylinder. And conversely, you could always go to the Add menu up here at the top and do it that way. It's the same exact thing, so I'll do it that way. Doesn't matter. Now down here in this menu, right after you add the cylinder, there's the Add Cylinder menu in this bottom left corner. If you don't see the words Add Cylinder, you could scroll up probably and see this. You're going to want to click it's going to say 36 under vertices. So where it says 36 right here, if you left click it, you can then hit 12. So type in 12 and then enter. And now we've set the number of vertices that make up our cylinder to 12. And remember that you can scroll your middle mouse wheel to zoom your viewport camera in and out. And you can see that our cylinder lines up. It's oriented in a way such as that the vertices are facing up and down, forward, back, left, right, whatever. And we actually want edges to be facing in those directions. So to get it oriented properly like that, we can hit R for rotate, and then type 1, 5. And that's so we rotate it 15 degrees. and then hit enter to finalize the rotation. So now our cylinder has nice edges that are facing forward and back and left and right. And that's what we want. So now if we hit 1 on the number pad to bring us back to a front view, we can see that the coffee mug is actually a lot bigger, or the image of the coffee mug is a lot bigger than we want it to be. We want it to be about as big as our cylinder. So the way we correct that is back down here with the background images parameters. You can set the scale of the image by, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this, you can see down here it gives you a size. My size is set to 5. If you want to make the image smaller, you can either click the arrows on the left and right hand sides of this button right here. So this left arrow, if I click it, it makes it a little bit smaller. But if you want to decrease the size a lot faster, you can just click right in the middle of this area and left click and hold the left mouse button in, and then drag your mouse to the left. And now it's a little bit off center, so we can we also, above the size, you can set the X and Y values of the image. So the position of it, we can offset it to the right a little bit in the X direction, which is what we need, because the image right now is kind of offset a little bit to the left, or in the negative X direction. So if we hit the right arrow on this little X button, that actually looks pretty good. So that's close enough for me. So, and if you need to do smaller values, you can always click right in the middle of the button and input more precise values. So if I wanted to do like 0.11, you can edit the hundredths place of the decimal value if you really want to go for precision, but I don't really find it necessary. So this looks pretty good as far as the width, and we can always fix the issue of the height of the 3D cylinder by just simply scaling the entire cylinder in the z-axis. So to do that, with this cylinder selected, so if you right click the cylinder, it'll be highlighted in orange, like an orange border. You can hit S for scale, and then because we want to scale it only in the z-axis, or the up and down axes in Blender, we can hit Z, and now at this point we move our mouse up and down and we can change the height of the cylinder. And right about here looks about right. That's good enough. And I don't expect everybody's cylinder to be exactly where mine is, because we're not doing exact values or anything right now. We're just kind of eyeballing things. So yours might be a little bit offset in some direction, more or less. And just remember, if you do need to move your cylinder in any direction like this, you can always, with the cylinder selected, you could always hit G for grab, and then just move your mouse closer to where you want to like move it, and then left click your mouse to place it there. So just if you need to do that, you can do that, because your screen will probably not look exactly like mine does. But if it does, that's great. I mean, that just works. All right, so now we have things perfectly set up, and this is going to make things a lot more easy to visualize here, because we're at the part where we're going to add the handle, and now we have points of reference as to where we're adding the edge loops and why we're adding them in those places. So we need to go into edit mode, because we're done doing the basic scaling and rotating of the cylinder, just the cylinder itself. So we need to get into the finer modeling of the cylinder, or the sub-object levels of it. So we need to go into edit mode. To do that, you can either click the object mode button down here and then just click edit mode, or you can just hold control and hit tab while holding control. Actually, that was wrong. Just hitting tab alone will toggle between edit mode and object mode. But to select what sub-object level you want to be in, that's where you hold control and hit tab. So let's start over with that. If we're in object mode, let's go to edit mode. So you can go down here and click object mode and then go to edit mode. Or conversely, you can just hit tab to do that, to go from object mode to edit mode. So while we're in edit mode, hold control and hit tab and bring up the sub-object level that we want to work in. And I'm going to select vertex. I think we should be able to work in vertex mode fine at this point. So click vertex, and of course, as opposed to holding control and hitting tab to switch the sub-object levels, you can also hit the buttons. So this is right here, this button where my mouse cursor is at, that's the face select mode, and that's the edge select mode. And that is the vertex select mode. But we want to be in the vertex select mode. So we need to create edge loops that will allow for this handle to exist, basically, this coffee mug handle. So what we do is hold control and hit R, and then you can let go at that point. Now whenever you move your cursor within this cylinder, it should create this like pink line right at the center of it. And you want it to be a horizontal pink line. And while that pink line is visible, if you left click, it will turn orange. And then you can move your mouse cursor or move your mouse up and down at this point, and you can move it along to where you want to move it to. Now, because we have this image of the coffee mug in our background, you can see exactly at what point the handle connects to the mug. And depending on how detailed you want to get, you can be as exact or as not exact as you want to. But I'm going to go for precision just to show you how much precision you can get out of this. So I'm going to left click and place my edge loop right about right up here, because if I zoom in closer, you can see that this handle, it kind of curves in a little bit, and I want it to follow that shape as closely as possible, just because I can. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. So you can zoom in and out by middle mouse scroll wheel. So if you scroll forward and back, you can zoom in and out. And also, if you want to pan the camera view, you can just hold shift, and while holding shift, middle mouse button click and hold the click, and then drag your mouse. So right now, the middle mouse button and shift are being held while I move my mouse, and I can pan my camera like this to move it around within my my viewport, just as a tip. So we want to add edge loops basically at the this point right here where my mouse cursor is, this point, and this point. So to do the other three, because this is already finalized up here, I'd left clicked up here to finalize the edge loop. I can just hold control and hit R again and put my mouse cursor right here. The pink line shows me that it's going to create a horizontal edge loop if I were to left click, and that's what I want to do. So I will left click, and now I have an edge loop created, but it has not been placed anywhere in particular. So I'm gonna move my mouse up a little bit, and I'm gonna create it right here because this point lines up right with the bottom connecting bit of the top part of the handle. So I'm gonna left click to finalize this horizontal edge loop to be right there. Now I'm going to add another edge loop and do the same thing for the bottom element. So hold Control, hit R, put my mouse cursor over here so that a horizontal pink line appears. Left click to tell Blender that yes, I want to create that horizontal edge loop. And I'm going to move my mouse button to show where I want to place the edge loop along that along the cylinder. And I'll place it right here because that's where the handle connects there. I'm going to hold Control, hit R again, and then I'm going to left click on the cylinder again when the horizontal pink line appears. So I left clicked, and now I can move my mouse up and down, and I will put the line right there. So now I'm going to deselect everything by just hitting the A key. Oop. Just remember that if you hit the A key, it will select everything. If nothing is selected, it selects everything. But if there's anything selected, it selects nothing. So hit A until nothing's selected. Now at this point, I'm going to middle mouse click and hold the middle mouse button down and drag things over to the right. And this is going to be, this face right here is going to be the one part of the handle, and it's going to extrude downwards and then reconnect at this point. And to better illustrate this, I'm going to go back to my front view, and let's go into the face sub-object level at this point by holding Control and hitting Tab and then clicking Face. Or you can just go down to the bottom right here and click this icon right here, the icon where the face on the cube is highlighted in orange. You can also click that to change to the face sub-object level. So now we just need to extrude the handle. So to do that, one big thing with Blender is just getting used to rotating your camera using the middle mouse click, hold, and drag. So being able to do that really quickly and comfortably is just a big part of 3D modeling. So I'm just hitting 1 on the keypad. I'm in a front view, and I can middle mouse click, hold, and drag, and I know that this is the right face. This is the face that I need to extrude for the handle. So with this selected, so if I go back to my front view by hitting 1, I can hit E for extrude and bring it out a little bit. And I'll just bring it out to about this far and then left click to finalize the extrusion. And I'm gonna hit Z on the keyboard to bring us to a transparent wireframe mode. So now now we have our first extrusion for the handle created, but it is too wide for the handle, the coffee mug handle. So this polygon actually needs to be scaled down a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so we can get some precision out of this. So I'm going to scroll my middle mouse wheel in till it's nice and big. I'll hold Shift and then click and hold my middle mouse button and drag my mouse to pan it into the center of my view. And I can let go. And now I'm nice and close to this handle, and I can see closely what I'm doing. So this polygon is a little bit too wide for the handle. it's about twice as wide as it needs to be. So I'm just going to give it a nice uniform scale so that it matches the width of the handle. So with this polygon selected, which is a right-facing polygon because we are in our front view, I'm going to hit S for scale and just scale it down until it is about how wide I want it to be, and then left click it to finalize the scale. Now at this point, I'm going to get really precise just to show you that you can do this. I'm going to hit G for grab because I'm going to move it to about right here, left click, and then I'm going to hit scale again because I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm basically going to model it to fit this curve as exactly as I can, just because I can, and it'll be good to demonstrate, that you can do that. So I'm going to hit S for scale again, make it a little bit wider, left click to finalize the scale. I'm also going to hit G for grab again, move it down a little bit to about there, left click and place it. I'm going to hit S for scale again, just make it a little bit bigger, left click to finalize the scale, hit G for grab so I can move it again, and then move my mouse. And that pretty closely follows the shape right there. Now, if you could very well just like follow the rough shape of things, but I'm just going for precision here just to show you can do that. Now at this point, I can hit E for extrude again because this point right here matches the shape of the handle and this right here. So it follows along these lines. So we're basically doing 3D tracing. So I'm going to hit E for extrude again, move my mouse out, maybe just a little bit like this, and I need to scale it down again. So I left clicked and finalized the extrusion, and now I'm going to hit S for scale and make it even a little bit less thick again, and left click again to finalize the scale. Then I'm going to hit G for grab because I need to move it up, and I will move it up to about here and left click to finalize it, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit R for rotate. I'm just going to rotate a very tiny amount just to kind of follow the curve a little bit, and then I will left click to finalize the rotation, and then we're ready to keep extruding and scaling and rotating to follow the shape of this handle. And at a certain point, the scale or the thickness of the handle is going to be pretty constant. So right about here throughout the rest of the handle, it's pretty much the same thickness. So I probably won't need to use scale for the rest of that. But I'm going to do one more extrusion right here to about right here. Left click to finalize the extrusion, hit G for grab, and move it just up a little bit and to the left. So it's like right there, smack dab in the center. Like I'm looking at this point right here to be right in the center of this handle. I left click to finalize it. I'm going to hit S for scale and move my mouse towards the selected element to scale it down. And that is about perfect thickness right there. So I'm going to left click to finalize the scale. And just notice how these lines are following the exact shape of the handle, or at least as close as to exact as I wish to, basically. And I'm going to rotate it a little bit just to keep following the curve gradually. So I'm going to hit R for rotate, and I'm going to rotate this edge about that much should be okay. I'm basically just rotating it so that when I do hit E for extrude again, the extrude roughly follows like in the direction that it needs to go next. So I hit E for extrude, now I move my mouse to about right here, I'll left click to finalize the extrusion. I hit R for rotate. Going to rotate a little bit like that. And then I will left click to finalize the rotation. So so when we're doing this handle, we're basically doing, with a polygon selected, we are hitting E for extrude. We move our mouse somewhere, left click it to place the extrusion at that point, and then we scale it if it needs to be thinner, and then we can rotate it to make it so that it guides the next extrusion in the right direction. That's kind of the workflow that I'm following. So I will quickly move through the rest of the handle by just remember E for extrude, move my mouse out a little bit, left click to place it there. I can hit R for rotate to get it rotate a little bit more, left click to finalize rotation, and just remember you can hit G for grab to move it back to the center of wherever. Like, I hit G for grab, and now I can move my mouse, and I will move this selected element wherever I wish to. And I'll move it right here, left click to finalize that movement. And I'm just gonna scale it a little bit more. So I'm gonna hit S for scale, move my mouse just a little bit outwards to better match the thickness of the handle. And that's about right. So I'm gonna left click and finalize that. So I'll keep doing that. I won't keep explaining it. This is the part where you can kind of do this on your own and not have to follow instruction until you get a little bit closer to the bottom, and then we'll follow along together. So I'm extruding, I finalize extrude, I'm rotating, finalize rotation. I just moved and finalized the movement. Extrude, rotate, grab and move. Extrude. I'm going to grab and move because it's kind of off position. I'm going to scale a little bit. I'm going to extrude. And just remember again, if you need to pan your camera, hold Shift and click and hold middle mouse button and drag your mouse in whatever direction that you need to pan, because I need to focus more towards the bottom of the handle, so I need to do that. So I'm going to get that nice in the center and then continue to extrude the rest of my handle. Rotate, extrude, rotate, grab, extrude, rotate, grab, maybe a little bit of scale right there. The handle starts to get a little bit bigger, so I extrude, rotate, grab, place it in the center, and scale. Remember, you always have to finalize each type of transformation. So if you're scaling, you always have to start the scale, move the scale, and finalize the scale. So start extrude, and then I'm moving the extrusion with my mouse, and then I left click to finalize the extrude. Same thing with the rotation. I hit R to start the rotation. I move my mouse to move the rotation, and I left click to finalize the rotation. I also need to scale this a little bit. And scale a little bit inwards. And once you're kind of at the point where you're about like right about here, and it's just going to be one more polygon that connects it to the part of the mug that needs to be connected to. I'm just toggling between wireframe and solid. So you can see that this polygon right here kind of needs to be joined to that polygon. So to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm I'm going to select this polygon by actually make sure that you're in wireframe mode so you can see through your geometry here. So hit Z if you're not in wireframe mode. And then you should be able to right click this, this polygon right here and hit X and then delete the face. So click faces, I'll just delete the face there. We also need to delete this face right here. So right click this face to select it, hit X, and delete the face for that. So then at this point, I'm going to middle mouse button click and drag my mouse, and you can see I have like this part right here is hollow, and this part right here is also hollow, which is what I want. But now I need to be in edge mode because I'm going to be just creating polygons by selecting edges and then joining them together. So to go to edge mode, if you want to go the button route, you can simply go all the way down to right here where my mouse cursor is and click this, this little button right here to the left of the current one that's selected, which is the face select mode. So if you click that, we're now able to right click edges and we can edit that, that type of element. So, and of course you can always hold Control and hit Tab to switch to edge mode instead of clicking the buttons. So I just like to give you the option. So hit Z to go back into solid mode. And then you can kind of clearly see that when you middle mouse click and drag your mouse while holding it, you can see, you can kind of look at your mug from all angles and see what you're working with here. So I'm gonna let go, and I obviously need to connect this edge to this edge, this edge to this edge, and this edge to this edge, this edge to this edge, and then that edge to that edge. So to do that, because we're in edge mode, we're able to edit edges. We can right click one of the two edges that needs to be joined, and then because we need to select a second additional or multiple edges, we hold Shift to then we're able to right click another edge such as this one, and now they're both selected. To join them and create a polygon, simply hit the F key and it should create a polygon like that. And when you're relatively new to 3D modeling, it's good to rotate your camera and look at it from multiple angles whenever you're hand stitching polygons, because sometimes the lighting in the scene will make it look as though it created something in the correct way when really it connected it to the wrong point. Like for instance, you might end up accidentally like selecting an edge back here on accident and then join it like that. But if you're at like a certain angle, it might look like it's correct. Like there, it looks like it's connecting to the edge right there. It's actually going through, all the way through and to the back of the mug. So I simply, every time you hit the F key and join edges, I recommend just middle mouse click and dragging your mouse and rotating your view around it just to make sure that it looks all right. But yeah, like I said, if you right click one edge, hold Shift and right click the other one, hit F, you create a polygon. Now if you hit A to deselect the polygon so nothing is orange, you can do the other edges. So I'll right click this edge, hold Shift and right click the other edge, hit F, A to deselect, I'll click my middle mouse button and drag it to rotate it so I can see these two edges down here. Right click one of the two edges, hold Shift, then I'll right click the other one and hit F. Middle mouse button click and drag so I can see these two edges. Gonna right click the first edge I want to weld, hold Shift and right click the other one and hit F. And now if I scroll my middle mouse wheel out, I can see that my coffee mug handle is perfectly stitched to the mug. And at this point, I just need to make the mug hollow. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, here I'm just panning my view, which remember it is hold shift, and while holding shift, click and hold your middle mouse button, and then you can drag your mouse and it'll pan your view. I just want to pan my view so that the mug is right in the center of my view. It'll just make things easier at this point. So I'll let go, now it's at the center. I want to go back into the face sub-object level of this mug, because to create the hollowness or the inside of the mug, I'm going to do a face extrusion. So to do that, you know that you can go down to here and click the face sub-object level, or you can hold Control and hit Tab and click face. Does the same thing. And if doing those two things didn't result in bringing up the face sub-object level, one of two things could be. It could be that your mouse cursor is not within the viewport area and it's off to the side, like in over one of these menus, or you somehow ended up back into object mode. So check those two things whenever my instructions don't give you the same result. Just make sure you're in edit mode. You're in edit mode down here, and that your mouse cursor is somewhere in this general area. So I'm going to rotate my viewport to where I can view the top face up here, because this is the face that I'm going to need to do multiple extrusions and scalings of. And so if I right click this top face, I am going to hit E for extrude. And this first extrusion that we're going to do is not going to be in the up or down selection. And since that's where it wants to default to, we're actually at this step, we're just going to right click to cancel the extrusion, because we don't necessarily want to move in the up and down direction. We want to just right click so it will snap back down to the original position. But make no mistake, there has been an extrusion, and at this point there are two faces that are shaped like this cylinder cap that are taking up the exact same space right now. So if we hit S for scale, that extruded face is going to become smaller and remain connected to the first one, which will create the border or the top lip of the coffee mug. So after I'd hit S for scale, this extruded face that I had created, I can move it in and out towards the face to make it smaller or bigger, and it's really up to you as to how thick you want the top rim of the mug. So once it looks as thick as you want it to be, just left click to finalize the scale. And with this inner face selected, now we just need to extrude it downwards to create the inside of the mug. So actually, let's hit 1 for the front view, 1 on the keypad, so we're in this perfect front view. And then let's hit Z to go back into wireframe mode, because this is going to help us visualize how deep the coffee mug will actually be, and therefore how thick the walls will also be. So if we hit E at this point, we can move our mouse downward and bring it down to about, I don't know, right about there is good. That's about how deep down we want the mug to be. So we'll left click right there. And the space between right here and right here, of course, is just the thickness of the bottom part of the ceramic of the mug, so to speak. That's what we're seeing. So let's hit Z to go back into solid mode. And if we middle mouse click and drag if we middle mouse click and hold the middle mouse button down, we can drag our mouse And we can rotate our viewport and we can see down into the inside of the mug, which is cool. And at this point, from a shape or a geometric standpoint, our 3D model of this mug is done, but it's not really aesthetically pleasing or correct. Like, it doesn't reflect light in the same way that a real coffee mug does. It's all faceted, it's all geometric as opposed to smooth. And there's two things that we do to make this mug actually look like a coffee mug. One is simply, let's go back into let's go into object mode of this coffee mug. So you were probably in edit mode right now. To go into object mode, just either you can hit the tab key, or you can just click this button down here and go to object mode. So while you're in object mode with this selected, so if it's not highlighted in orange, make sure you right click it so it is. And over here on the left side panel, there's an option that says shading. And if you click the smooth button, you'll get this slightly smoother shading, but it still doesn't look really good. It still looks pretty awful. And it kind of looks worse from a certain standpoint. But that's the first step of making this look realistic. Now, the second step here, this is a tool that a lot of 3D modelers spend most of their time perfecting the use of. We're going to use something called subdivision surface modifier, and this is only a tool that you can get better with and get comfortable with experience. There's really it's not a very friendly tool from the beginning, and I've spent most of my 3D modeling getting good at using this one tool. So to demonstrate the use of this tool, first thing I'm going to have you do is, with this coffee mug selected and highlighted in orange, so just right click it if it's not highlighted in orange, we're going to go over to this panel over here at the top of the right side panel. And you can see all these little buttons in this little gray bar. If you click the blue wrench, this like little socket wrench thing, it'll also say object modifiers when you mouse over it. If you left click that wrench and then click the add modifier button, it brings up this menu to where you can go down under this generate panel and click subdivision surface. Now when you click subdivision surface, it will modify your coffee mug in a very particular way. And the way that it modifies it is something that is very hard to wrap your head around at first, and it took me a while to get used to. But let's just move our camera around and look and see exactly what adding this modifier did to the shape of things. Now, it looks better, or it looks smoother, but it still doesn't look correct. Like things look a little bit too rounded. Like the bottom of the mug kind of got like bowled out, and it needs to be flat for the most part. And the shape of the handle isn't necessarily that round. And to maintain the shape of the object that you add a subdivision surface modifier to, you have to add what is called supporting edge loops. Now, I'm going to go into edit mode just to demonstrate the different edge loops that are going on in this mesh. So if you hit tab and go into edit mode, and we're going to go into edge select mode. So I'm going to hold control and hit tab and click edge. Or if you want to go the button route, you can just click this little button down here where my mouse cursor is. Now, this coffee mug is made up of a bunch of different edge loops. If you hold your Alt key and right click an edge, it will select the edge loop that edge is part of. So there's this edge loop, there's this edge loop, this edge loop, and this edge loop, this one, this one, this one, this one. And actually, all these little rings that go through the shape of the handle of the mug, those are also edge loops. Now, whenever you add a subdivision surface modifier to a 3D model, it is going to round certain things in a way that you don't want it to, but it's also going to round and smooth things that you do want it to. My general rule for the subdivision surface modifier is you want to add a supporting edge loop next to the shape defining edge loops. Now, for instance, this edge loop right here doesn't really define any major change in the shape of the mug. So this edge loop doesn't really need a supporting edge loop. But for instance, these top two edge loops right here, because it defines something something hard, like a hard edge or a hard corner of the mesh, it is good to add a supporting edge loop. And I'll show you how to add the supporting edge loop. Just as before, when you had held Control and hit R to bring it into the edge loop creation mode, and then you would get the pink line, I'm going to left click all the way up here. And then I'm going to move my mouse up to right up here, just before the very top edge of the coffee mug. And then I'm going to left click to finalize that. Now, because I've created this supporting edge loop just underneath the very top edge loop, this basically communicates to Blender that this edge right here is very important to be hard edge and that it will not be rounded off. But as you can see, because there's no supporting edge loop on the inner edge loop right here, there's nothing in the inside like to support that one. It kind of collapses inward and just kind of turns into mush. So if I add a edge loop on the inside ring so if I get my camera oriented so I can see the inner ring right here of edges, just remember you can rotate your camera with the middle mouse button, click and hold and drag it like that. I want to create an edge loop on the inside. So if I hold Control and hit R, and then I move my mouse onto an edge that is on the inside of the mug, the pink line will actually be an edge loop that exists on the inside, as opposed to if I move my cursor on the outside edge, it'd be creating on the outside. But I want to create it on the inside, so I put my mouse over one of these edges on the inside, and I'm going to left click down here kind of by the pink line because I do want to create this edge loop. And then if I move my mouse up, I can bring a supporting edge loop to just below the inner edge, like right about there. And then I can left click to place it right there. If you are stuck in a state of you have this edge, if you end up in a spot where your inner edge loop that you created, you can't bring it up. You can't bring it up high enough because your mouse cursor hits the top edge of the screen right here. Like, notice how I can't bring this edge loop any higher than it is because my mouse, like, it's as high up on the screen as possible, so I can't move it up any higher. You can also just let go of the edge loop at this point because I've created it already. Actually, I'm gonna re-explain this. So, like, let's say we're back at the step where I create the edge loop. So I hold Control and hit R. I'm in edge loop creation mode, and then I've left clicked already. And I'm stuck and it won't go high enough. I can right click and let go of the edge loop at this point because it is created. Then I can move my mouse down here to where the edge loop is, hit G for grab, and then Z for the Z axis, and then just move it up manually to about there, and then left click to finalize it. So if you ever run into a thing where you're doing some sort of transformation or rotation or something, and you're running out of screen space, so you can't move that, just remember you don't necessarily have to use that current tool to make that movement. You can always do a manual movement. So your initial extrusion is not necessarily the only way to move that extrusion. You could always let go of the extrusion, followed by hitting G for grab, and then you can just manually move that extrusion. So just a very, very subtle quirk of modeling that you can use to your advantage. So now, because I have a supporting edge loop just before this edge right here, as well as a supporting edge loop right here, just before this edge loop, Blender knows that because there are two edge loops that are very close to each other, that this should be a maintained hard edge, and therefore it will not collapse and look sloppy or overly smooth, because this should be relatively hard. And the same goes for the coffee mug handle. So we could also create some supporting edge loops to make that a better shape. So at this point, I'm not going to have you follow along too exactly, because it'll just take up too much time. Just remember that if you're in edit mode and edge mode, you can hold Control and hit R to add a edge loop, and left click wherever if you want to create that edge loop. And so, like, perfect example right now of the need for a supporting edge loop is the inside of the mug right here. It kind of bowls out at the bottom, but really it needs to be a flat bottom surface. And the reason why it bowls inward is because there's no supporting edge loop down there to tell Blender that that bottom edge is important to maintain. So therefore, just like it geometrically smooths it. And like I said, it's just one of those things that you got to get used to by using it repeatedly. So I'm going to go into Z, go into wireframe by hitting Z. And here's a good way to visualize things. Because I'm in wireframe mode, I can add edge loops on the inside part of the mug without looking at it from a weird offset angle like this, because I can see through things. So I'm able to hold Control and hit R and move my mouse around. Now notice how at certain points, like right here, the pink line only goes on the inside and doesn't extend to the outsides. But if I move my mouse, say a little bit right here, the pink line goes all the way through from edge to edge of the mug. But because I want to create a edge loop on the inside, I want to make sure that the pink line only goes to the inside part, which you can kind of just visualize that it's on right now because it doesn't go all the way through. So I want to create this edge loop right here. So I'm going to left click and I'm going to move my mouse down, and you can see as I move this edge loop down that this rounded off part towards the bottom becomes less and less round and more flat as I bring it towards the bottom. And you can see this orange line that I've created and I've started to move, and as that orange line gets closer and closer to the bottom, the inner bottom line of the mug, you can see it get closer and closer, and I want to bring it to just before that bottom line right there, that bottom line which defines the bottom of the inside of the mug. Now if I left click and place that edge loop there, finalize that, I can rotate my camera and look in, and now the bottom surface of it is not round in like a cereal bowl. It's actually flat, which is what a coffee mug is like for the most part. It's a little bit smooth in there, like between the supporting edge loop and the very bottom edge loop, there's a little bit of smoothing going on, and that kind of creates a nice imperfect flat surface. So it's not exactly flat. And so basically, subdivision surface modeling, this modifier that we added, this is what enables very organic shapes to exist in Blender with at least easily. Because now the current state of this coffee mug is that we have very, very smooth outer surface, but the very hard edge defining aspects of the mug, like the lips of it and the bottom of it and all the flat parts, are also flat. So it's an accurate model because of subdivision surface. And it's really just a matter of experimenting with the edge loop tool plus the subdivision surface modifier that we added with this blue wrench here. So right here, if you look at the mug in the current state, there's one thing that looks very wrong about it, which is the bottom of the mug. And it's the same thing. The bottom of the mug does not have a nearby edge loop. Like the closest edge loop to this edge loop is this one right here. Therefore, the smoothing that goes on between this edge loop and this edge loop causes it to collapse sort of inward like this, which is why the bottom here is kind of shaped like a bowl. So we just have to do the same thing, which is hold Control, hit R, and down here kind of creates that pink line which we want. We're going to left click to create that edge loop and drag the supporting edge loop to just before the very bottom of the mug. So it's just above the very bottom edge loop. And now we get a nice ceramic but still organic bottom edge of the mug. And you notice all these weird shadows going on towards the bottom of the mug. If you want to get rid of this sort of weird artifact that's occurring, you can simply add more subdivisions to the subdivision modifier. So right here, we have the scene view subdivision count set to 1. If we click the right arrow on this little button over here, we can up it to about 2. And then things really start to look nice. Things really start to look organic at this point and smooth, like they would in real life. But still, you look at the shadowing down here at the bottom of the mug, you can still kind of see this like weird hard edge right here. So if we add another subdivision, it just makes it a little bit better and more crisp. So we're really getting a nice and well-defined shape here. And just another supporting edge loop exercise. One thing to note is that I think I switched to object mode without telling you. So if to be able to change the subdivisions on the subdivision modifier, you do have to be in object mode. So I apologize. I didn't tell you to go down here and click object mode to bring you into that. So to be able to access this menu here, you do have to be in a object mode, I believe. Well, actually you don't. But I did change object mode without telling you. But you should have been able to add the extra subdivisions and make things look nice and exact, or whatever you want to call it. So what else is there to do? The shape of this handle is kind of blobbed out. Like it generally looks pretty good, but it doesn't look perfect. And I invite you to go back into edit mode and make this handle look less blobbed. by adding edge loops to it. So in the same way that we added the supporting edge loops to make the rim around the mug less blobby and the bottom less blobby, you can actually add supporting edge loops to the handle to do the same thing. You can add edge loops here. You can add them along here, here, all the way throughout this this mug. You can add these supporting edge loops to maintain the shape of whatever area that you're adding them to. So, for instance, if I didn't want this like weird rounded part right here to exist, like if I wanted this to be less blobbed, all I would have to do, like it kind of like curves in like this, all I'd have to do is create a supporting edge loop right here and then move it in towards this part right here. Remember, to create a edge loop, all you have to do is hold Control and hit R and then move your mouse over the part of the mesh that you want to add the supporting edge loop to. So I created that supporting edge loop there, and as a result, it's a little bit less blobbed out. Still is a little bit, but that's to be expected with ceramic. But yeah, you can add edge loops to wherever, and I recommend adding edge loops just everywhere and see how it affects the shape of whatever object you're dealing with, whether it's a coffee mug or whatever. You can do the same thing to the birdhouse to give it more of an organic thing going for it. So yeah, create an edge loop here, and it kind of supports the top shape of the handle, but the bottom part doesn't have a supporting edge loop, so it kind of curves inward. Maybe that is a result that you want. Maybe you wanted the outer edge of this to be nice and flat, but it kind of curves inward on the bottom. But maybe you want it to be nice and flat on both, so you could create another edge loop, a supporting edge loop right there, and now it's a very, very rectangular and flat throughout. So just remember, the edge loop tool, which is Control plus R, or I mean hold Control and hit R. Don't want to confuse you. Don't hit the plus key. That's the edge loop tool, and if you experiment with that enough, you'll kind of get used to how it works. And subdivision surface modifier affects different shapes very differently. So one thing to show you is if I use subdivision surface modifier on a cube, I just added a cube to the scene. But if I add a subdivision surface modifier to that, look what happens to the cube. It turns into a complete sphere, basically, like a really rough sphere, but it's a sphere nonetheless, because there's just no fine geometry occurring within the cube. But as soon as I create edge loops that support the shape of the cube, I can make it sort of a nice smoothed cube with non-hard edges, which you might desire if you're 3D modeling a dice or a die rather, and you don't want perfectly geometrically hard edge lined edges. You might want to use subdivision surface when doing that. So you get these nice kind of like highlighted edges on your 3D models when you do things this way. And just remember, you can always click smooth on the shading to get rid of those like facets. And this modeling technique is extremely difficult to use, but it is the technique that is responsible for a lot of the detail that you see in like a lot of the AAA video games out there. When you get high levels of detail on the surface, it's because people are able to model using high subdivision counts and add a lot of detail that would be otherwise very difficult to add without using it. So just know that when you do subdivision surface modifier, it is also good to add that as a finishing touch. It's when you start adding supporting edge loops to everything, it becomes more and more difficult to change the overall shape of things when you have lots of extra lines. So I don't like adding those supporting edge loops until until I'm like ready to finalize whatever model I'm creating. So just something to note. But yeah, I recommend tinkering around with these tools that I've described. Like, these are very, very complicated tools I've introduced. So I just recommend messing around with them as much as possible, because it's really going to increase the quality of whatever you're capable of doing with Blender. And hopefully I didn't overwhelm you guys too much. I've added a exponential amount of complexity by introducing these tools, and just know that it's not going to be easy at first, and it will it'll definitely take a lot of time. And until next time, I will see you next Wednesday, hopefully. Thanks.